Hey everyone, I am absolutely thrilled to be here talking about Monster Hunter World Iceborne with Tsujimoto-san and Fujioka-san. And I have a lot of questions. Monster Hunter World was my favorite game of 2018. I am very excited for this massive expansion, as you've referred to it as. And kind of my opening question is, in Monster Hunter World, the world itself is the star of the show, and there are so many different ways that the monsters can interact with the environment. The player can interact with the environment, and then the monsters can interact with each other. And it's all very surprising, and kind of having those moments where something unexpected happens is a big part of what pulls you in, I think. What sort of experiences like that can we expect in the Hoarfrost region? What new surprises await players, and how can they interact with the world?
Well,
that was certainly the main concept of Monster Hunter World, to have such a rich interactive environment in terms of players, monsters, and the stage. And we definitely want to keep the same concept for Monster Hunter World Iceborne. So when you reach the new frosty climate of the Hoarfrost Reach, I don't want to spoil all the details, but it's an amazingly large area. It's bigger than any of the existing maps, and there's going to be all kinds of cool interactions for players to enjoy.
One of the most exciting things in Iceborne is the raider ride ability, and in the trailer you showed hunters riding Jagresses around, and it looks super fun, and I love the idea that you can prepare for the hunt as you're kind of riding on these small monsters. But something that you guys have mentioned is that you are not able to fully control these monsters with raider ride. Why did you make it, I guess, kind of more of a on rails like experience rather than letting the player fully control the monsters?
The concept of this feature didn't really match directly controlling the monster. First and foremost, I think in terms of immersion, this game is about being a hunter in this beautiful world. If you're suddenly able to control a monster directly, and there's not really a great way to explain that, and the little monster just kind of becomes the player character for a short time, and it didn't make sense to me on that basic conceptual level. But even apart from that, the idea of this feature is that this Hoarfrost Reach is the biggest map so far in Monster Hunter World, and that means there's a lot more ground to cover while you're exploring. Being able to get around the map quickly with these kind of shortcuts and features is just a way to make it easier for players to traverse. And as you mentioned, it gives them a chance to do some pre-hunt prep in terms of items, whether it's sharpening your weapon or taking a hot drink and so forth. And it also means that the monster is able to automatically track the Scoutfly tracks for you, which if you had to do it yourself if you couldn't find them, you got the same situation as being on foot. So getting onto the monster means that it's going to be finding the tracks for you and making your life a little bit easier.
I really love the hub in Astera and in the basic version of Monster Hunter World, just because it has so much personality, and it's kind of a comforting place, I think, to return to after you do a hunt. And yeah, it's just spending so much time with it, you just really get used to it, and it starts to feel like home. How will the new hub, Seliana, offer both like a different experience from what we're used to in Monster Hunter World, but will it also, I guess, kind of provide that comfort that we're used to?
やっぱりまさに今からなんていうかな、設営されていく、増築されていく場所っていうのはすごく
Yeah, Astera had a setting of being this base that was being built before you even reached the New World. You're part of the 5th Fleet, so by the time you get there, over many years, they've constructed and built it out, and there's a lot of people living there. So it has this kind of scale and grandeur we wanted to depict. In the case of Seliana, the storyline, as you know, being that you're discovering a new frontier region, essentially, it's by necessity more compact, just because the fact that you've just got there and it's being built up throughout the game as you play Iceborne. It is pretty compact, again, because it's brand new and quite packed with sort of buildings and features and stuff. But I think it also has a certain cozy atmosphere because it is your home out in the wilderness, and of course, because it's a frozen climate, you'll be able to see that people have hearths with fires, and even the chef's canteen is, rather than being this kind of outdoors eating space like in Astera, it's in this cozy interior where you sort of feel the warmth coming off all the food. So I definitely don't think you need to worry about not finding it cozy.
Monster Hunter Cross and Double Cross and Generations Ultimate is what it's called here in the West, but they have some pretty substantial features, such as hunter arts and different styles that you can have for each weapon that dramatically change how each weapon play, and also prowler mode. Is that something, or are any of those things something we could ever expect to see in Monster Hunter World now, or maybe in a Monster Hunter World sequel down the line?
はい、
Even though both sort of sub-series or both sets of titles you just mentioned all have Monster Hunter in the name, every title we make has its own sort of standalone concept, and the gameplay features are built on that. They don't necessarily make sense to transfer between games. So in the Double Cross or Generations titles, we had the hunter arts and styles and so forth. Those are really designed as part of a game where we know players who are getting into that they've really drilled down to the specifics of each of the 14 weapons and the ones that they play. So adding these arts and styles was a way to give them new varieties and new strategic options within their weapon choices, and that was how we expanded the gameplay in those titles. Meanwhile, in Monster Hunter World and in the new expansion Iceborne, the way we expand the gameplay is through the environment itself. It's this incredibly rich, detailed ecosystem with lots of interactivity going on, and you can use the environment a lot as part of the strategy of your hunts. So I think each title has its own unique take on putting aside the basic Monster Hunter gameplay of 14 weapons, hunters, and monsters. How do you expand the possibilities? And it means that we don't necessarily need or want to mix up the expansion of possibilities between each title.
Iceborne is in kind of an interesting position because there will be, I think, a sizable number of players who finished the story in Monster Hunter World and then kind of put it down and didn't return to it, and won't return to it until Iceborne releases. And then you have more dedicated players that are playing it regularly, that have kept up with the different post-release content that you guys have released. Kind of, I guess, at the outset of Iceborne, how are you going to accommodate kind of maybe lapsed players, and also how are you going to make sure that it's interesting for people who never took that break from Monster Hunter World?
やっぱりそうですね、今
We definitely want both types of players to be able to get into the Iceborne content right away and enjoy it. So whether you're someone who's currently a continuous ongoing Monster Hunter World player, or whether you, as you said, you've lapsed and you're coming back for Iceborne. I think if you did put the game down for a while and you get back into Iceborne, you might have a while where you're sort of having to refigure out your strategies, your gear, your skill sets, to figure out how you want to best approach the Iceborne content. And if you've been playing constantly, I think you're going to have a great variety of armor and weapons provided or created already in your kind of arsenal. That means you're going to be able to jump straight in with your existing strategy and then at some point start transitioning over to the master rank gear. But I think either way, eventually at some point after the beginning of Iceborne, both types of players will kind of catch each other up or meet up somehow in the middle, and then they'll be able to play together quite easily on master rank content. Because of course, even though you've got tons of gear in your box, once you start hunting master rank monsters, you're going to be getting the master rank crafting materials and making new gear and weapons anyway, and then you're both going to be using the same stuff.
In Monster Hunter World, there was a strong focus on uncovering this new strange place, and I think part of the wonder that came with it was the monsters themselves, and really selling the scale and menace of something like Zora Magdaros and Xenojiva and Nirgigante. In Iceborne, we're uncovering a new region again and uncovering new threats again. How are you going to, I guess, make that process exciting again? How is it going to feel like a bigger threat after all that we accomplished in Monster Hunter World already within the story?
そうですね、今回は、新しく発見された土地っていうのが、
One major difference in how Iceborne is going to feel is that in Monster Hunter World, based on the storyline, you were part of the 5th Fleet going to the new world. So it's a new world, but you're not the first person to set foot there by any means. When you arrive, there's all kinds of facilities already set up. The existing hunters and characters have already explored the world, and you're kind of going into the world that they've discovered for you and doing your own research. With Iceborne, you are among the first group to literally discover the Hoarfrost Reach. So it's a very different frontiersman kind of feeling where the map itself is going to unfold and unlock gradually because you're the first ones to map it, essentially. And I think that means that while both games, both content has this feeling of being a discoverer in a new world, like Iceborne is really just you're right up front there and you're finding out what is even here to explore. another thing that's going to keep it really fresh for even for existing players is that there's going to be a really exciting collision of old and new, because once you've got to the Hoarfrost Reach and you're exploring it and finding new monsters and also returning monsters like Tigrex and Nargacuga, you're still going to have quests that are taking place back in the Astera-based locations that you already know. So, for example, monsters that you've never seen before in the Ancient Forest or the Wildspire Waste are going to be appearing, and there's a whole brand new strategy to how do you deal with them in a different area. Even new combinations of monster on monster turf wars. So, you know, you think you're excited about Nargacuga coming back? Well, wait till you get Rathalos Nargacuga turf war happening in one of the original maps. Like, there's all kinds of exciting new possibilities and combinations that are going to be really cool for players.
Last question, just throwing this out there. Is there any possibility that we could see either a Monster Hunter Stories 2 or Monster Hunter Stories on Switch?
まあ最後のダメ元なんですけど、ストーリーズの続編の2スイッチ移植のストーリーズは出たりしないですか？可能性は。
ストーリーズ、ストーリーズはですね、ちょっとそう言ってもらえるとすごい逆に。
I'm really happy to hear you mention Monster Hunter Stories. It's a title we were very deeply involved with, and those who played it, I think, is very well received. So it's nice to hear that it's still in your mind, and you know, we're always thinking of what we can do in future.
If either one of those things happened, that would be great. I didn't actually get a chance to finish Monster Hunter Stories yet, but I thought it was a very charming game.
Yes.
Yes. Well, thank you so much, Fujioka-san and Tsujimoto-san, for your time. I'm very excited for this game, and it was an honor getting to ask you questions. So thank you very much.
Thank you.